Hello and welcome to One Brain at a Time. I'm Dr. K.
And I'm Dr. J.
So, really excited about today's topic because it's something obviously lived experience, but there might be a little debating going on here. So, what we're thinking about talking and reviewing is birth order. Dum, dum, dum.
Yeah, I absolutely want to know the birth order with the folks that I'm working with.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I never ask.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Maybe I do when I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course I do. Of course I do.
So the theory of birth order was developed by a theorist named Alfred Adler. And he developed this birth order theory in order to understand which order a child was born, that perhaps it shaped their development and their personality.
Yeah, and some of that, his earlier work, we're talking over 100 years ago, right? He was
born in the late 1800s.
Oh, okay. So, well, I know I'm losing track of time because it is 2023.
I know.
So like 100 years ago sounds about right. But early on, his work was kind of, I don't know, maybe a little sterile, a little more on the negative side.
That's not how I took it. No, because I'm so drawn to this.
Right.
But you know, he was of the era with Jung and Freud.
Yeah.
They were contemporaries of his,
okay.
developing their theories. And
well, kind of interesting, probably not a popular topic back then, but in modern psychology being within the last 100 years or so, yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about it until we were just talking right now, how innovative that thinking was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, for reference sake, birth order, I am team youngest child.
And I am team oldest.
So our homework was to research each other's birth order in our family, and we were going to share what some of the characteristics are and weigh in if we agree or disagree. And just for reference sake too, the birth order in our family of origin is you, then our brother who was 15 months behind you.
Yes.
And then 5 years later, the greatest gift of all.
And this is what fits the youngest birth order criteria.
True story. So, would you like me to go first?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. You can go.
So, these are, again, this is meant to be a thought-provoking conversation, but also to have some fun, because I don't even begin to claim I am an expert on this material, but it has been topics of conversation in therapy with clients, just birth order, what that means, and even, and we'll talk about this later, the relationship of romantic relationships or friendships and how that lines up. So this will be fun.
Yeah.
All right. So because we don't have a middle child represented in this conversation, I just wanted to just bullet point some of the stuff I pulled off the internet.
Sure.
So middle child, it is said they are peacemakers and pleasers. They are competitive. They are independent. They are easygoing, innovative, self-motivated, successful, make great parents, and feel left out. So again, I can't speak to this position of order, but wanted to make sure that our middle children who are listening were represented.
Yep.
The other birth order that was worth mentioning too is only children.
Yes.
And again, you and I can't speak to that. However, I'm married to an only child and I have an only child. And so a couple of characteristics that I pulled off the web was they are mature, they are perfectionists, they are conscientious and diligent, which I thought was interesting because check.
And from a birth order standpoint, the onlys and the oldest are usually
similar.
Very similar, yes.
Oh, okay. So getting started with team youngest. And I want to say I was fair to put down some of the challenges in this birth order too. So I have, and as I said before, I just pulled it off of the internet in no particular order. Positive. We tend to be positive.
The youngest tend to be positive?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Am I going to say these in every time?
I was just making sure who we were talking about.
I agree with that attribute. I think I can be a very positive individual. Second one, uncomplicated, which I do agree. Outgoing and charming.
Yes.
Yes. Hardworking. Mm-hmm. Yes. Persistent.
Oh, yes.
Funny.
Yes.
Social.
Oh, my gosh. Yes.
Relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where I will address the not so flattering, although I have arguments to counteract. Temperamental, which I wouldn't say I'm temperamental. Would you?
Rarely.
What do you mean rarely? I think a temperamental is like kind of tantruming, and
I think I speak for all. We know when you're not happy.
oh, I can't wait to get to your list.
And we know when we haven't delivered the goods, whether it's...
Yeah. We get the point. I think on the list of oldest is delusional. This one's spoiled. You know, it's funny because I think even if you're not into birth order, that's a general idea with youngest. And I don't see myself as spoiled.
No, I don't see you as spoiled. I think that there were times growing up, for instance, Dad one Easter gave you the largest Easter egg basket, and John and I got average sizes.
Yes, it should be. What's the issue with that? Did you tell your sleeping therapist about that basket? Well, I think also, too, I remember growing up that both you and our brother's name's John would kind of call Mom out. I don't know so much Dad, but you were so much harder on us than you are on her, that kind of thing. So I guess maybe if that equates to spoiled.
Well, and I mean, having two kids myself, I know that the realization, I knew I just wanted two kids. Right. And so my youngest was my baby. And so as I've said earlier, I love being a mama. And I just feel like my parenting at times was skewed because I looked at this child as my baby.
Right.
And so I think that at least with Dad, he had some of that with you.
Right. And I think another factor about this is birth order, but then another sublayer would be gender, just family system setup. There's impact on all of it, but yeah. Okay, back to me. I thought this one was way off. Impatient.
No, that doesn't, no, not at all.
I mean, impatient to me, I think it's more driven. We're driven to get things done. And when they're not getting done, we just encourage people to get them done. Why are you laughing?
There are times that you can be impatient.
Oh my gosh, this is so priceless watching you be diplomatic. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much fun this was going to be. And what's even better is being able to associate this to the brain, because birth order and brain definitely has a correlation. If all of this is true, how birth order impacts the brain.
Yeah.
So going back to my list, I saw this on several lists and I didn't really appreciate it, but it said manipulative. What is that shenanigans?
Again, I rarely see that.
I'm like, manipulative. What about motivative? Like, I motivate. I don't manipulate. That sounds so harsh. Oh, Lord. And last but not least, self-centered was on several lists. And I think that kind of goes back to, at least in my mind, that idea of being spoiled, entitled, it's all about me kind of stuff. And I think it's adopted in our family, my statement of it's all about me, which is true.
That has been your slogan for at least 35 years.
I know. And who knew it was just part of my birth order? I think it's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
The two others that I forgot to mention, which I identified with, was free-spirited.
No, that's for sure you.
And adventurous.
Yep. Yes, you have absolutely.
So let me ask you, with the list that I just went through, percentage-wise, how much would you say that's me?
Spot on.
Oh, I can't wait for your list. And you better have put challenging ones on there.
Oh, there are.
All right.
And I agree with them.
All right. Let's hear.
All right. So the first one is domineering.
Domineering. Well, it's funny though, because when you think of that, if you would have said that to me when we were kids, 100%, but I would not choose that word to describe you today.
I agree with you, but I definitely identify it when we were younger.
Yeah. And that's a good point too, because I think a lot of the stuff I took off the internet was based on children, but obviously the stuff can change as you.
Yeah. Another one was protective.
Yep.
Overachieving. Potential for leadership. Responsible. Determined. I'm blowing through all these.
I know. Notice how you don't pause to have my reaction.
Okay, so am I protective?
100%.
Am I overachieving?
Yes.
Do I have potential for leadership?
Yes.
Am I responsible?
Yes.
Am I determined?
Yes.
Am I outspoken?
I would say I don't think that would be my go-to, but if it's something that you're passionate about, but I'm guessing that's, I would say 50-50.
It says, because a firstborn is sometimes seen as the spokesperson for their siblings, many find comfort within advocating for themselves and others.
So again, to that point of what we said when we were kids, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely were the spokesperson.
Ambitious.
Yep.
Opinionated.
I don't think
I would say when I was younger, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So those are the things that characterize the oldest in a family.
Yeah, that's an interesting exercise, actually, to kind of review this with a sibling and say, do you agree or not agree? So I think what it also kind of conjures up is that our relationship today versus what it was when we were kids.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're 5 years and 11 months.
Let's say 6 years. 5 and 11 months. Come on.
So, growing up, when you were born, I have this vivid memory of knowing Mom and Dad were at the hospital, and then the phone rang, and our grandmother answered it, and she got off, and she said, "It's a girl." And I just remember the absolute sheer joy at almost 6 years of age that I had a sister.
Aww.
And so when you were a baby, it was just so much fun.
Well, especially I would imagine because you were born into this world to be a mom. You've always had maternal energy, so having a live doll.
Yeah, that was it. And then I think the roles really started to get defined when our parents split, and then were eventually divorced. And I just think that a lot of the things that I listed under oldest definitely became true for me.
Right. And because I was so young, I wasn't really aware of the chaos. And I think I know that you became the protector, and especially for myself and our brother, that you were the surrogate parent for a lot of our childhood.
Yeah. In particular with you.
Yeah. Well, I was so adorable. So adorable. And I feel like when early on, I'm going to say up until I probably hit middle school-ish, I would say that we were pretty close.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But once I hit, I'd say my sophomore year in high school, and boys became, an interest of mine, that's when I really saw you as the little annoying sister.
What?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Yes.
Could it have been any reason? One of my favorite stories is, obviously, if you're listening to this, you can hear how much we sound alike. And back when we had rotary phones, that's right, for the kids who are listening, Google it. when a boyfriend would call and I'd pick up the phone and he would think I was you and I would play along so I could find out the dirt.
And if you weren't doing that on the phone, you were spying through the window.
Of course.
So anyway, that's where I think that, our age span started to separate us because of where we were chronologically in maturity and where our needs were.
Yeah. I think so. I have a different recollection of it because I always, everything you did and everyone, your friends, everything, I was like, oh my gosh, she's so cool. And just any part of being a part was magic. And then you left to go to college. And then after that, it seemed like because, at that point you were 18 and I was 12, so junior high, and I was getting into some trouble and really building autonomy as far as, I'm cool and I don't need you and I don't need anyone. And I think for a while, I mean, we never were out of each other's lives, but I definitely started to, I don't think I would say build independence, but definitely wasn't in that little kid, little sister, look up to you role, like, oh, anything she thinks is everything. And then going through you getting married and having kids, and I was 17 when Brittany was born. Mm-hmm. So I was still basically a kid being an aunt, but how great that experience was, having babies in the family. But I was never that maternal. You were always maternal. And I was like, yeah, kids are cool, but I'm not like, oh, I want to hang out all the time. But through that time, and I finished undergrad and then moved. And so we were always in each other's lives, but obviously not the level of closeness we have today.
No, but you know what? Looking back, you and I were just in different phases of our lives. And it was good. You were that adventurous person going to other parts of the country and trying out different things. And I was being responsible as a young mom and taking care of my kids and doing my thing. But I really feel that, once you got married and then had
your child.
I was trying to figure out how to word.
For those of you who don't know, my sister looks at me as if I was her surrogate because my daughter, her niece, she feels as her daughter.
This is my third child. But, that definitely started putting us on the same plane in life together.
Oh my gosh, you were my lifeline when I became a mom.
Well, you were my lifeline when Dad had the stroke, and really I was down. And you were devastated as well, but, decisions had to be made, and I was struggling, and you allowed me my space. And for me, that was just such a monumental moment of you taking care of me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too, because as you were just talking about that, I was thinking how overall, I would say that in all the 50 plus years we've been sisters, 85% has been the dynamic of you being the caretaker. Mm-hmm. And through therapy and work, I really had to step out of that because I couldn't be in a full relationship with you if I continued to be the little kid with little kid expectations. And that was definitely a big, not a huge part, but a bigger part to my own work.
Yeah, and I had to get out of that place of guilt that somehow I was failing you if I didn't show up, and to allow you your process, which in return allowed me to get more centered and out of the parent-child role that we had been in to sisters.
Yeah. And I think that took place, at least my recollection, is we had had some disagreements throughout the years or whatever that we never addressed. And I think it festered, at least on my part, it had festered. And because my strategy of choice was to avoid, ironically enough, in my personal world, avoid, in my professional world, tackle it right on. But being the little sister, the little kid, avoiding any kind of disruption with you especially. But I want to say it was about 8 years ago or so. I think it was Columbus Day weekend or whenever I came up to Vermont, and we sat in your living room and laughed, cried, put it all out there. I think we talked for about 5 hours, and it really shifted the dynamic. And I feel like we were finally able to be with one another as equals, as opposed to the older sister, the little sister kind of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, talking about the birth order, it's that space where I still can slide back into that of, no, whatever you want to do. And, deferring to you because I want you happy.
Which I like. I like a little dysfunction every once in a while.
Oh my gosh. But, that falls on me. Yeah. And it, using my voice, which is like you. I mean, I didn't use my voice so often until I was pushed emotionally into that place of switching on my fighter. And she came out and, but yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that we're talking about birth order, but what also has to be mixed into this is any other stuff, trauma, anxiety, depression, substance use, all of this stuff,
of course,
plays out in the whole equation on who we are personality wise.
Right. I think what's fascinating about the discussion of birth order is it's a jumping off point.
Yes.
And as you were saying that you ask your clients or explore that, how much does that take over in a session with somebody? Are you educating people?
No, it's for my own gain to, it gives me sort of a framework to ask questions. And oftentimes the oldest has still carried on a lot of those traits.
Yeah.
And that has to be wrangled in because there's a part of it that's great, but there's a part of it that's dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And I would say honestly that the middle child, which is they feel forgotten, is the one area that I haven't really put a lot of time in to understand because I don't get a lot of middle children.
Well, how funny is that though, that fits the criteria that they're not prioritized. It's awful. It's awful. I mean, As I said before, I don't make it a priority, but it comes out naturally when I'm talking to folks because I'm such a family systems oriented therapist. And so that naturally comes out. And I think it's really the other layers to it. You kind of touched upon it, but the oldest child, if female, the oldest child, if male, if the next child is female or male, like there's so many dynamics to it. Parent, what the parent was the parent the mother an oldest and is parenting a youngest. I mean, you can really go down the rabbit hole with all of the different formations and how that can impact
a relationship.
Yeah. I've always found it interesting. Actually, you and I were just talking about this, I think yesterday, that my mother-in-law is an only, my husband's an only, and my daughter's an only.
Yeah.
And how, for me being the youngest, because only and youngest are a good fit. Youngest and oldest are a good fit.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with two youngest or two oldest or whatever, but if you were to read anything about birth order and relationships. But the other thing I thought of was my three bestest friends from childhood. All four of us are youngest.
And what's so funny is that the majority of my closest friends are all the oldest.
Is that right? So it makes me wonder about relationships, friendships, sisterhoods, that kind of thing. How interesting that is.
Yeah.
Now, your, first husband, only husband. I don't know why I keep doing this. He was a youngest.
He was the youngest. Yep.
Yeah. So from the perspective of relationships, that fit. And you know what, when we think about romantic relationships and what draws us to somebody, like you were saying earlier, that if what we're saying is true, then your draw to him was being in that caretaking mode. He would have been in that like to be taken care of mode or whatever as a youngest, and how it would have been interesting to see if you had, maybe you wouldn't have ever been drawn to an oldest, but
yeah, I think, and this is where unhealthy strategies of survival come in, that I learned that my value and worth was based on doing. And over time, like it wasn't something that I consciously said, oh, I'm going to be kind and I'm going to take care of and I'm going to be, and it was just something that materialized over time. And I found my worth and value by people recognizing that about me.
right.
And so it makes perfect sense why I would choose someone to take care of.
Right.
And that's a whole nother podcast.
Right. Well, it also talks about what this whole podcast is about, the brain. If we're looking to feel safe and normal and status quo in our lives, then assuming those roles, whether functional or dysfunctional or somewhere in the middle, it would make sense to continue that role. And that's where our work really starts to examine, how does this role affect your daily quality of life? Is it in balance? Is it out of balance? And so for me, cut back to me, the youngest child, the funny, I've kind of referenced this before, that being funny has always been a great tool, a great strategy to avoid, to deflect. And even though I love humor, when it was out of balance, it wasn't a great quality to have because it was masking what was really a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. So,
but it also becomes our identity.
yeah.
And so you have such an incredible quick wit that I've always been so envious of, that your brain can think so quickly with a rebuttal to a situation or to a person. And so, everybody knows that you are funny. With me, I'm going to guess that, historically, if anybody needed anything,
Right.
I would, like with the kids and my husband at the time, like I took care of all of their needs, and I found such a sense of purpose and fulfillment. And what I've realized is that, again, I was trying to feed this system that I had developed of my value and my worth, and it didn't go outside of that.
Right. So here's a meta question.
Yeah.
Do you think if by divine action I was born first and you were born last, would we be fundamentally different people?
I think that your development, if you had been firstborn, it would have absolutely played out in who you are.
Yeah. Are you going to tell me that I wouldn't be as funny?
I think you'd be funny as well as a parentified child.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, too, that for context for us, I think it's important to say or to point out that our mother is the youngest of her tribe. And our father, would he be considered middle?
Out of 4 kids, he was the second.
But the only boy.
Yes.
Which had a different dynamic to it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So couple-wise, romantic-wise, I can understand because he was definitely more like you with that caretaking, and Mom has always been the adventurous. Like, she and I share humor. We share a lot of things.
Mom is very quick-witted, too.
She and I will just get going and can't even breathe.
Oh, I some of my best memories are the 3 of us together, and we are just wetting our pants because we're laughing uncontrollably.
I know. She's got a wicked sense of humor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in terms of birth order, brain therapy, I think we kind of covered it.
Yeah.
So, I would suggest or offer the insight for anyone who wants to learn more about this. It's real easy to look up online, and Adler was the jumping off point, and it's nice that he started the conversation. And I just saw a research study, I think it was 2021, where they were looking at 9 and 10-year-olds to see if birth order played a part in mental health. So I'm guessing Adler's looking down going, cool, you're taking my concept and taking it to the next level.
Yeah, for me, like I said earlier, any tidbit of data that I can get on anybody is going to add to the holistic treatment plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a fun discussion, especially with your siblings. All right. Well, that's it on birth order for now. And I did want to mention, too, because you and I had talked about it, I just have to be completely transparent that there are times where I might be repeating myself from one podcast to another. So bear with us. When we like to make a point, sometimes we utilize things we've already referenced.
And I'm right alongside you on that one too.
Thank goodness. All right. Bye for now.
All right. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.